of Brandt's commentary. There is significant repetition in the hero's task given Nephi and his brothers, retrieving from Laban the scriptural records that would preserve for Lehi and his family the language of the fathers, the laws, the customs, the words of all of the holy prophets since the world began. This quest follows what Leland Ryken, in How to Read the Bible as Literature, calls the storytelling principle of threefold repetition. A given event happens 3 times, with a crucial change occurring the 3rd time. In the first of the 3 visits to Laban, and apparently without a plan, Laban futilely asks Laban to relinquish the records. Well, next the brothers follow Nephi's plans to offer their gold and silver and other precious things in return for the plates of brass. They only find that Laban takes all of their wealth, and then he has them pursued, and he's trying to kill them. So now we're to the 3rd time. And the 3rd time Nephi goes alone with no plan. He says, I was led by the Spirit, not knowing beforehand the things which I should do. That's 1 Nephi 4:6. So then the Lord's plan goes into effect here. They've tried their hand at several different options. Now it's the Lord's turn. This marks the crucial change that Ryken points out. Each of these efforts is put into motion by a pledge. And the pledges become more and more intense. At the initial request to get the plates, Nephi says to his father, of course, I'll go and do what the Lord commanded. After Laman's failure, Nephi increases his initial commitment to go and do what the Lord commanded and applies it to all of the brothers. And now we start seeing the stuff that Nephi is made of. Now he applies it to everyone in the group, not just himself, as he did in front of Lehi. Now he says, as the Lord liveth, and as we live, we will not go down unto our father in the wilderness, until we have accomplished the thing which the Lord hath commanded us. 1 Nephi 3:15. Now, when the next plan fails, and the older brothers are reproved by an angel for beating the younger brothers, Nephi calls for them all to be faithful in keeping the commandments of the Lord, and he affirms the power of God by alluding to the great miracle of Israelites crossing over the Red Sea with Moses leading them. The emphasis has moved from I will go and do to we will not leave until we have accomplished. To the Lord is mightier than Laban and his 50, and the Lord is able to deliver us even as our fathers, and to destroy Laban even as the Egyptians. So you can see the movement in this incredibly interesting narrative of their spooky adventure. Now, Brandt says, I certainly believe that these events took place. However, I agree with Rust that when Nephi wrote them down, he crafted them so that the events themselves become part of the meta-message of Nephi's entire work. He is intent upon showing the work of God. That's his whole point, Nephi's. That's his bias. And to do so, he tells the remarkable story of God's dealings with Lehi's family. By highlighting repeated events in the history, Nephi can increasingly bring God into the process. In retrieving the plates, the brothers failed when they were on their own. But as they continued to try, Nephi's resolve and dedication increased, even approaching the point when God would intervene on their behalf. The crucial change in their efforts came at the point that the structure itself predicts that change would occur. The 3rd attempt, which is also when the Spirit becomes part of their process. Isn't that interesting? On the 3rd attempt, Nephi's message is more than a story. It is a metaphor for human ineffectiveness without God. Yet the power to accomplish even the impossible, when God is behind the enterprise. So it's interesting how there's more going on here than we supposed if we do a quick, shallow reading of the Book of Mormon. When you stop, when you read through these stories and begin asking why, how, when, which, who, when you begin to ponder the Scriptures and delight in doing that, more bubbles up. That's the one thing. Obviously, Brant has spent his lifetime studying the Book of Mormon, for which we are all eternally grateful for his wonderful insights. Well, and then, of course, his brothers murmur, and they say, well, this is a hard thing the Lord has asked us to do. And now, and then he goes to Nephi saying to his father, yes, I'll go and do, and all that. Now, Nephi, in front of Lehi, see, Nephi had his vision, and Lehi had his vision probably at the same time. But Nephi, there's no place in the record where it says that Nephi actually told his brothers about his revelation. But Nephi tells Lehi, once Lehi says, oh, hey, you got to go back to Jerusalem, Nephi says, yes, I know. I understand how Yahweh works. He is telling Lehi, I understand. You and I are seeing eye to eye. We're on the same page. It's those guys over there that aren't on the same page with us. But yes, I understand. I'm with you on this. And that's why he says, I'm going to go and do what the Lord has commanded, because I know it's going to be accomplishable. So, and then he went to the journey of the wilderness, and they came upon the place. Now, this is another really interesting insight. While modern people, what they did is, you remember when the kids got there, they cast lots to see who was going to go to Laban's house first. This is another interesting little tidbit in the Book of Mormon. And Gardner, and I'm on page 103 of Gardner. He says, now while modern people might be familiar with casting lots to make his selection purely by chance, that scenario does not explain what's happening here. The brothers were not simply assigning someone at random to make the attempt. Throughout the Old Testament times, and in fact in many other cultures in antiquity, the Greeks were big on this also, as were the Babylonians, it was assumed that God would intervene with the lot casting. Well, and this is, the Arabs were huge on this also, come to think of it. Casting lots was the means that people had of discovering the God's will. In Nephi's case, it was discovering Yahweh's will. All four sons had accepted the father's assignment, and they knew from his own lips that he had received a prophetic vision directing them to take this action, to go to Laban to get these plates. They knew that much. Regardless of Laman and Lemuel's skepticism, they knew that this was a religiously directed mission. Because, of course, they're going back to get the Scriptures. So, of course, it's going to be a religious mission. Almost any action that was random might be used in a divination, but divination frequently took forms that related to human activities and tools. And Hunibli discussed this very interestingly among the Arabs in the pre-Islamic years, involving 3 arrow shafts. One would be blank, one would be inscribed, "My Lord hath commanded me," and the third would be inscribed, "My Lord hath forbidden me." Up to 7 shafts with these inscriptions and blanks would be placed in a bag and shaken. The diviner would then randomly select one without looking. Now, since the human operator made no conscious selection, God was directing the selection. A common modern descendant of this type of lot casting is selecting the short straw. A number of straws or other objects that look alike are arranged so that the person making the selection can only see the like portion. One of the straws is shorter, and the person who selects that straw will be designated for the specified purpose. Now, you got to keep in mind also, Nephi is the younger brother here in all of this process. His social position was decidedly inferior to that of his older brothers and of his father. While the record includes no information about their ages, Nephi died approximately 55 years after the departure from Jerusalem. Since the whole point of recruiting Ishmael's family is to secure wives for Lehi's sons, Sam must have been of marriageable age, which at that time was probably in the early or mid-teens. So I lean slightly toward the mid-teens, so that Nephi in his early teens would also be considered marriageable.